Hi everyone, this is Stiofán MacAmhalghaidh. I'm going to do a short video here on masking, autistic masking for Neuro Pride Ireland 2021. So let's start off. What is masking? I think it's a misunderstood term. I'm going to explore that a little bit over the next few minutes. Often masking is described or understood as putting on a mask. So people tend to assume it's similar to sort of the way somebody would have their kind of adopt a kind of a professional approach, in the workplace or dealing with customers, or would put on a kind of particular aspect of themselves when they're out socializing with friends, as opposed to when they're visiting granny. And it's not like that at all. It's not something that's kind of like a persona that you put on and can take off again easily. It's actually more about protection of the self. So in a sense, you could almost think of it more like armor rather than a mask. And as it's a protection thing, it's something which is necessary in some ways and is in a way almost like involuntary. It's something that you're kind of compelled to do for protection, not something you choose to do. And I think that's important. This isn't something that people decide to do. Isn't like a persona that they adopt. Okay, it's not something you choose, and it's not something you choose to put on and take off. It's something that kind of feels essential. So what's this protection business about? How does masking protect a person? It protects a person because autistic people are outsiders, aliens, and humans are not particularly good about that kind of stuff. They can be cruel and dismissive and uncaring, strip you of your rights, strip you of respect, dignity, so many different things. And we're a social species, and you have to operate within a social environment, not just because we depend on other people in our daily lives, but because on a psychologically deep down, this is part of the way we are. We have to actually interact with other humans in order to feel okay as human beings. It's part of our fundamental part of our well-being, that interaction. And in order for that to work, people need to accept you, and they need to be prepared to sort of interact with you, particularly as an equal. What really matters. So in order to survive in that environment, you need to understand yourself, see yourself as others see you, and work on that and change that so that what people see is something like them. Because humans are, like I said, pretty mean about this kind of thing. And if you don't look like them, they just shut you out. And it can be horribly damaging. In all manner of different ways. By adopting the other person's perspective and kind of adopting what you see that they would want you to be in order for you to be acceptable, you generate this mask, and it's something that kind of settles on you like dust, simply through trial and error right from early in your life. It's not something you kind of manufacture and design and then kind of like assemble and adopt. Okay, it's something that builds up slowly over time, and then almost unnoticeably by you. And the little bits of you that you put aside and suppress kind of get put on a shelf in the back room and quietly get forgotten as you get better and better at playing this false role. It's all about surviving, really. But it also does harm to you as you do it. And that harm in a very real way is about suppressing the real you, who you really are, which then results in that real you, your true self, never getting a chance to explore who you are. What are your interests, your tastes? What are your preferences? What are your desires and passions? What are the things that are significant for you? What are the things that give value and importance in your life? And without exploring those things and developing those things in a way, that real you never gets a chance to develop and mature and become a rich and complex person that you're supposed to be, that you're entitled to be. And often what happens when people unmask, which is kind of consciously saying, I'm going to identify this mask and dismantle it piece by piece and try and be me, they discover, I don't know who I am, because this is something you've suppressed so long and so hard that you don't know who you are. You don't know what your interests are. You don't know what your true goals in life are, and so on. And it can be a really, really terrifying experience to sort of feel like a non-person, but you're not. It's just that you're having to catch up on decades of self-exploration, really. It could be a very, very distressing experience, very scary. So, mask. I suggested it might be armor, and perhaps it's not armor, and perhaps it's a sword, and that sword has two edges, because it's necessary in a sense, or it feels necessary in order to survive in this world that is unsympathetic and unaccommodating, but it also does you harm along the way. And even though unmasking can be difficult and painful, disorienting, confusing, retaining that mask does you harm. Not just because it's about suppressing who you really are and the true you, if you like, your true self, but also the sheer weight, the burden of maintaining that falsehood, because you're basically having to play a role the whole time. Okay, it's a falsehood the whole time, and I think this is an experience that other people have come across. Kieran Rose, who's probably one of the leading researchers on this and has done more to give us an understanding of masking and what it's about than pretty much anyone else at the moment. Had referenced the idea of double consciousness, which was kind of over a century old now as an idea, by W.E.B. Du Bois, who talked about being a black man a century ago in America and having to sort of be two people, the real you and the public persona you, and how difficult that is, how much of a burden that work is to be that double person. One of the consequences is you can put more work into the mask, the false you, than into the real you. And I've already mentioned some of the consequences of doing that. But there's other elements to it as well. I mean, that work of carrying the mask and performing the mask, if you like, is it's hard work. You still have to be a person and function in life on top of that. So you're kind of taking on two pieces of work, one of which is hopefully hidden from everybody else, but also just doing all the normal stuff that then allows you to do, like holding down a job and interacting with friends and stuff like that. And it does get to be hard work. And it's a very common experience of long-term masking that in the end, that burden just becomes too much to carry. And one of the consequences of that can be what we call autistic burnout, which is where it just becomes too much and you essentially burn out. We all are familiar with the idea of burnout. This is purely about burnout specifically from the work of maintaining the mask. And that can lead people to be unable to function normally in their lives for an extended period of time. And be able to hold down a job, be able to hold on to relationships, to be able to interact with people socially. And that can actually be a traumatic experience all of its own, just to feel like you can't just, I'm in my mid-30s. I should be able to do things. Why can't I do things? And that can be actually quite a distressing experience in itself. I just want to mention this idea of glitching, which is not a common term, but it's been around for a while. Glitching is when your mask slips a little bit. A common way that will happen is that somebody will, without noticing, they will start stimming, and then suddenly realize they were stimming, and oh my God, did someone see me? And kind of like trying to kind of roll back on that and hide it, and that can actually just add to the stress of masking. And those things can often happen in stressful situations where you get tired, where you're under pressure, and it occurs usually more and more as a person comes towards the point of reaching burnout, because it's about your ability, your energy to sustain that mask is running down. Okay, it's like a battery getting tired, and it's a kind of a warning sign in a way. If you can find yourself increasingly glitching, that you could be approaching a state of burnout, and it might be time to take matters into your own hands, and consider kind of feel like a managed unmasking process. So what's unmasking about? Really, it's about dismantling the mask and trying to bring out who you are, your real you, and exploring that person, which can happen in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s. I know people who are in their 70s and 80s and are only starting to explore who the person is behind that mask. It can be very disorienting and confusing. And what really helps is to have support from people who are compassionate and understanding, and that can be hard to find because most people in your life have only ever really known you through this mask. So you often the responsibility is like, why are you acting like this? Why are you? Who are you trying to be? Me. I'm trying to be me. I'm trying to be me at last. But it can feel like you're actually trying to pretend to be somebody else, when ironically it's the opposite. You're trying to be the true you. Unsympathetic responses can make the whole process so much harder. And one of the things that really, really helps an awful lot is community support and a lot of patience in yourself and forgiveness for kind of stumbling along the way. But community support is very, very important, because other people who've been through the process can help and guide you along as you go, kind of mentor you, if you like. This, by the way, it should be borne in mind, is something which isn't quick. It can take months and it can take years to actually start to rebuild and understand and dismantle that mask. Okay, enough wittering on from me. If you really want to find out about this subject properly, there is only really one place to go, and that is Kieran Rose's blog and videos and training courses and explorations, and including a published paper which is linked from his blog page, which Kieran did in collaboration with another researcher. Really important stuff, and it's an important thing for the well-being of autistic people to actually get their heads around this, and also the people who are allies to and family members and friends of autistic people to get an understanding of masking and what its significance and consequences are, and how to help people work to dismantle the mask and be who they really are. There's a link there to autisticadvocate.com. And heartily encourage you to go and take a look and learn a little bit more. Thanks for listening.